I think about this a lot lately. A kid crying out in a dark forest, but the trees just absorb everything. No echo comes back. In physics, sound needs a surface to bounce off, or it just disappears. But there's a psychological version of that silence, and honestly, I think most people walk right past it without ever noticing. A child reaches out, not always with words, sometimes just a look, a small gesture, a moment where they're vulnerable. They're looking for something in someone else's face that says, "I see you, you're here." And when that reflection never comes, when the room just stays quiet, a child doesn't blame the room. They're egocentric in a completely innocent way. They assume it's them. They start to believe their reaching out just wasn't worth answering. For a long time, psychology focused on trauma with clear scars, the accident, the loss, the violence, wounds with a clear before and after. And that framework is essential for a lot of people, but it left this whole quiet landscape of suffering completely unnamed. Because from the outside, nothing catastrophic happened. The house is fine, the family photo looks normal. Nobody writes a memoir about the dinner where no one asked how their day was, or the time they held back tears in their room waiting for a knock that just never came. It's the story of what didn't happen, the glance that was always somewhere else, the comfort that never showed up. And how do you even explain an absence? You can't without feeling like you're making a big deal out of nothing. But those nothing moments leave marks. They're just etched on the inside of your skull instead of on the surface. That's emotional neglect, and I think it stayed in psychology's blind spot for so long precisely because of that. It's not an event, it's an absence, the emotional attunement that just wasn't there. It's like learning a language. A kid learns to speak because someone speaks back. Same thing with emotions. You learn your own inner world because someone reflects it back to you. When a caregiver says, "You seem frustrated, want to talk about it?" they're not just making conversation, they're giving you words for your own soul. They're telling you that what you feel inside is real and worth paying attention to. But if that mirror is cracked, the kid grows up into an adult who genuinely can't figure out what they're feeling. There's a clinical term for this, alexithymia. It's the difficulty identifying and describing your own emotions. Study after study links it directly to early emotional neglect. It's not a personality flaw, it's a developmental gap, a hollow space where something should have been built. So what shows up in adulthood is this weird contradiction. Therapists know it well, but the person living it, they're just confused. These are often the high-functioning ones, the reliable friend, the competent coworker, the partner who never seems to need anything. They seem fine because they learned to perform fine so early it became automatic. Dr. Jonice Webb, she's done a lot of work on this. She describes patients showing up with no real complaint, just this vague sense that something's wrong. Like everyone else is tuned into some emotional frequency they just can't pick up. It's not depression exactly, it's not anxiety, it's just flatness, feeling like you're watching everyone else feel things in color while you're behind glass. And then relationships. This is where it really shows. The person who grew up unseen doesn't just struggle to connect, they often unconsciously push connection away the moment it gets real. Someone gives them a sincere compliment and they deflect with a joke or put themselves down. Consistent, steady love doesn't feel safe. It feels suffocating, suspicious, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that makes perfect sense. If love was unpredictable in your first world, you learned not to count on it. You adopted. You built a self that didn't need anyone, that had everything under control. From the outside, that looks like strength, but underneath, it's just armor. Really old, really effective armor. The longing for closeness never died. It just got buried so deep you forgot it was there. Needs don't just vanish. They just stop making noise because they learned a long time ago that noise was useless. There was a big review in 2024, Child Abuse and Neglect Journal, looked at 25 studies and found this consistent, powerful link. Adults who experienced childhood neglect really struggle with emotional regulation. And the researchers pointed out something striking. Emotional neglect is still one of the least studied forms of maltreatment, which says a lot, doesn't it? The most invisible wound is the one we've put the least effort into understanding. Here's the thing I need you to hear. The way you learned to be in the world, it wasn't a mistake. It was a solution. It was a brilliant adaptation to an environment that required you to take up less space. The kid who went quiet learned silence was safe. The kid who became the clown learned laughter was the only reliable way to get attention. The kid who became the achiever learned success brought the recognition their emotions couldn't. They used the only tools they had, and they used them perfectly. The problem is we don't automatically drop the life raft just because we've reached shore. You're not in that original room anymore, but your nervous system, it hasn't fully gotten the memo. It still flinches when someone gets too close. It still feels wrong when someone's genuinely kind. It still struggles to make sense of your own feelings, like trying to hear a whisper through a concrete wall. But here's what gives me some hope. It's not permanent. Your brain can change. Neuroplasticity, it's real. Even after a rough start, targeted therapy and just practice can rewire those old patterns. I'm not saying this to give you a 10-minute fix. Healing from absence is slow. It's a weird kind of grief. How do you mourn something that never was there? How do you process a feeling with no specific memory attached? You do it with patience, with persistence, and almost always with help. But it starts smaller than a therapist's office. It starts with one decision, that your own internal experience is worth taking seriously. Just because no one witnessed your feelings back then doesn't mean they weren't worthy of witness. They always were. Day to day, this looks less dramatic than you'd think. You don't need one huge breakthrough. You start by noticing. You notice you're angry, and instead of burying it or justifying it, you just let it sit there for 10 seconds. You notice you just deflected a compliment, and you pause and ask yourself quietly, why did I just do that? Small acts of paying attention to your own inner world, and they seem tiny until you realize that for some people, nobody ever taught them their inner world was worth paying attention to at all. This stuff doesn't change overnight, but every time you honestly check in with yourself, something shifts, just a little. And for someone who grew up feeling unheard, learning to finally hear yourself, that's the whole point. There's a specific kind of person who ends up watching something like this late at night. Maybe they're scrolling, half distracted, and they stumble across the phrase emotional neglect, and something inside them just clicks. A quiet recognition, like something uncomfortably familiar just got named. If that's you right now, pay attention to that feeling. Not because a label magically heals anything, but that recognition is something more. It's your own nervous system doing something it maybe never learned to do properly. It's finally, faintly echoing back to itself. The sound was always worthy of an echo. It just needed a different room. If this video put words to something you've been carrying, it would honestly mean a lot if you'd subscribe. There's more to explore. And if you want to support this work, click the subscribe button below. Thanks for watching.